Welcome back, everybody, to Goodie and Johnny Mo at the movies. We are here for episode 10. We finally hit the 10th video for this milestone.
Double digits.
Double digits. Very happy about that. So cheers to that. And today's video is the review on the recent release of Us, the movie, not the television show. This Is Us.
But before we get to that,
we
have to introduce our drinks of the night.
Go ahead. You lead off.
I am drinking a Murphy's Irish Stout in a Guinness glass. Now, truth be told, one should never drink anything other than Guinness in a Guinness glass. But if you're going to break the rules, at the very least, make sure it's another stout and not anything else. So so it's okay to drink Murphy's Irish Stout.
According to Johnny Mo.
Yes.
Mine's just a simple Blue Point Toasted Lager. Went back to just a favorite original of mine for tonight. Didn't have a chance to go out and get anything else, so this is what I had.
Just a quick shout out to family and friends of Goodie and Johnny Mo at the movies. Just want to give a quick shout out to my buddy Matthew, who's not feeling well this weekend, and I'm hoping he's doing better.
Guys, thank you so much for the support we've had so far. As far as subscribers, we're getting up there little by little, where we're inching our way up. So keep looking to subscribe. Tell your friends to check us out. Hopefully we can keep winning you guys over. As always, like, share, follow, and comment as often you guys can on our videos, all right?
And subscribe.
And subscribe, please. So I think without further ado, we're going to get right into the movie Us by Jordan Peele.
Yes.
So
we went and saw that.
We went and saw it on opening night. We saw it Friday.
We saw it Friday.
It's now Sunday. We've had a couple days to collect our thoughts.
I would say my thoughts going into this film were actually very positive. I had seen Jordan Peele's Get Out.
As did I.
And I thought it was good, but I thought it was a little overrated. I don't think it was all that. Like I thought it was
very interesting.
I think it was nominated for Best Picture, and I didn't think it was that worthy. I thought it was the...
Was it nominated for Best Picture?
I'm pretty sure it was.
Or was he nominated?
No, I think he was probably nominated for director and the movie for Best Picture. And I thought the movie was good. I think I gave it 3 stars, but I didn't think it was, unbelievable and the greatest thing I've ever seen. I just thought it was okay. But the movie did make sense, I thought. I thought it was an interesting story.
I thought it was very interesting, yes.
So I was actually looking forward to seeing if this movie, Us, was going to be even better.
Right.
I remember seeing the previews for Us, and they look pretty good. I think
the previews alone looked kind of intense and even scary. I mean, there's the one shot of Lupita Nyong'o she's just sitting there with her fingers like this, and you just see her eyes are just like the camera's almost like focused on her eyes and her fingers as she's just staring into the camera, and that was freaky.
Yeah, it showed itself to be like something like a pretty interesting premise that they didn't explain too much in the movies, except that you knew that there was a family out there and there was a doppelganger family that was harassing them.
And we are going to, we should say this now, spoilers, if you have not seen this film.
Do not watch this
if you have not seen this, because we're going to go through everything.
Yeah, we're going to let it all out. We're going to, every cat's out of the bag. Everything's going to be told.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the trailers did a really good job of keeping the mystery of what this film was truly about, but at the same time, definitely dangling enough to get you really interested to go and see this film.
And that's what I was looking forward to. I was looking forward to the execution and the explanation. And what was going on, because I think the movie, well, at least from the point of view of the preview, it seemed to have it seemed to be very stylistic.
Yeah.
It looked like it was going to be, a pretty, intense movie. So I went in there. I went into that movie with the best of intentions. I was really hoping to be having it to be, and we wound up seeing it opening weekend.
Yep.
Usually opening weekend, we're seeing franchise films, we're seeing superhero films, we're seeing Star Wars films. I don't know that we too often that we see a movie like this, or like a horror film.
This had a good crowd though too. So when John and I typically go to some of the films, we usually go to this small little mom and pop's theater that's in the town of Sayville, and this was in there. They have 4 screens. This was their largest screen that they had, and it was pretty packed for a movie. Sayville typically does not get large viewings.
I mean, we'll see something there on an opening night.
Right, and maybe half at most.
Quite often, even if it's a really popular film, like like something that's does unbelievable opening weekend. There's really not a lot of people there.
Yeah. The last time I remember seeing this many people in the theater was when we saw Avengers Infinity War last year. That had that was sold out. That had everybody there. Because most of the time there's another theater, a National Amusements Theater that's not too far away. That's a big franchise theater, and a lot of people tend to go there.
Yeah, I think more people tend to go to the big multiplexes because
just the amenities that are there.
You know what? I almost want to say I don't know that the screens are bigger because that big screen at Sayville is a pretty big screen.
But I think Island 16s, I think some of their normal size screens are bigger than Sayville's largest screen.
So needless to say, we're happy when whatever movie we're going to see at Sayville is on the biggest screen because we know we're going to getting a much more wider.
And I actually enjoyed the fact that there were a lot of people in this screening with one caveat. I cannot stand when
they heckle
in a horror or suspenseful film where people are kind of just talking through this scenario themselves, and that happened quite a lot in this film, where people are basically saying, oh, just get in the car, like certain scenes and sequences that were occurring, people were talking as if they were in the film and that telling the characters what they should be doing. That's very annoying.
Yeah.
Because you're ruining it. Like, you're ruining the suspense. And I almost feel like people are doing that to not scare themselves. They're trying to almost like talk themselves out of it. So I
can tell you right now, there was a group of people in front of us that definitely applied.
Oh, absolutely. And they were sitting directly in front of us.
One girl was like, she was almost saying like, she was ready to like hide under the seat. So then she would talk herself out of it by shouting out.
But yeah, and so that was a little frustrating. But it's just the intensity of having everybody there as well and kind of experiencing that. I do enjoy that communal feeling when everybody gets to have that viewing together for the very that's opening weekend.
Oh yeah, I mean the only problem you're going to run into though is if it's like a very young crowd, you're going to have to deal with people that just either they've been drinking beforehand or they don't mind talking out loud during the movies, and everybody's got their cell phone and they may not all be turned off. So that's it's just one of those things you got to deal with today's crowd, which I think is a little bit self-absorbed and maybe just not as respectful of the solemnity and silence of the movie theater.
Just the ambiance of what a theater is supposed to be.
So that being said, getting into the actual movie itself, I don't know where to begin because I think it started off good.
Yes. Yeah, I think the first...
Most of my problems were later.
And I agree, John. So John and I had a discussion about this after we saw the film. We kind of just sat in the car for like 10, 15 minutes, and we kind of just talked about what we saw.
Yeah. Almost wishing we had a camera there taping because it was
it was insightful.
It was fresh. It was fresh perspective right out of the movie theater, which is kind of like the best case scenario. Everything is fresh in your mind.
But I thought, kind of the whole beginning of the film is pretty much in the trailers. The family goes on vacation. They go to Santa Cruz. They end up in this like little beach house, so to speak. They kind of meet up with some friends, and then at night, their first night there, some shenanigans start to occur. And this is when the family comes, the doppelganger family kind of comes into play.
Yeah, basically you have like a carbon copy of each family member. But they're definitely like a nightmare version,
right?
A little bit of inaudible. They're scary.
Yeah, because they also move. They don't have normal movements. The two doppelganger versions of the kids move very quickly, and they're almost like getting down on like all fours, like moving as fast as they can, which was just kind of like odd in itself. The doppelganger father figure seems to be kind of more, just seems to be freakishly stronger than the real counterpart.
Well, yes,
at least in that opening scene that he comes into play.
And I don't know that they're supposed to have any sort of superhuman abilities.
But that was really the only instance that I saw that, right?
Well, I mean, they were extremely agile.
Very.
It wasn't superhuman, but it was like they seemed to be just a little bit more. Like to me, it lended to maybe like the little bit of the supernatural aspect of it.
Right.
Like they were freakishly stronger, freakishly more agile,
right.
as opposed to any sort of like superhero type, superhuman type thing. It was kind of weird. But one thing I didn't like about the regular father is that like, he almost seemed almost incapable of defending his family.
Yeah, it's like he was just he kept making the wrong decisions.
Yeah, he was
when
like
faced
joking.
with adversity.
He wasn't serious. Like he couldn't he a couple of times he put on a tough show, but like that was it. Like once you could easily call his bluff. And he was going to get...
And they called on it. And as soon as they started calling on it, everything...
He was getting his butt kicked.
Yeah.
I'm like sitting there going, I'm like, there was, I'm like, he's got a bat. And they don't.
Right.
And basically they...
But that's gone. Like, that's gone in seconds.
They take the bat from him and beat him with his own bat. And I'm just like, man, if this is my family...
From the opposite side of the door.
Yeah.
Too.
Yeah.
It wasn't even face to face. Like, they literally just reached
in, grabbed the bat, pulled it out, got it. And I'm sitting there going, I'm like, so I found his character, I think they did it almost for like comical purposes, but to me it was a little bit misplaced.
Well, for a film that's kind of described as more of a horror film, I have to say there was a good amount of comedic relief. A lot of it by him.
Yeah.
But and that's like sprinkled throughout.
Yeah, and I don't know that it was effective because I felt like it undermined his character to a certain point. It didn't make him a very strong character at all. Well, I felt like, and for a big guy, you almost kind of expected that.
Yeah, so this was who's that? That's played by Winston Duke.
Winston Duke,
right? Who's also, if you guys not familiar with the name, also played in Black Panther. M'Bato. M'Bato, that was the character?
I think that's his name.
Okay. So as far as like the characters go, I thought the acting was done fairly well with what was given to them.
Yeah, because keep in mind everybody was playing a dual role.
Yes.
And so that, to me that was impressive. So there was a lot of to me there was a lot of the movie had a very interesting and stylistic choices. That and that's what kind of drew you in. The fact that you had these people playing dual roles and that were radically different. Regular humans that are really scared at some points versus these really kind of freakishly strong or agile and bold and menacing characters, the doppelgangers.
They're not holding back, the doppelgangers.
Yeah. But
what was interesting with the doppelgangers is that the only one who talks is Lupita Nyong'o's doppelganger.
Yeah.
And when she talks, it's very jarring because she talks at this very low baritone voice, monotone.
Almost like guttural.
Yes. And at some points it was
guttural and whispery too.
Like you had to really pay attention to hear the dialogue that she was saying at some points.
Oh yeah, and I can tell you right now, I think there were definitely a couple of times where I didn't catch what she was saying.
Right. And knowing the ending, which we'll talk about in a minute, once you get to the ending, I think it was more important for that opening scene when the families, in the commercial you see this in the advertisement, that the families are sitting across from one another in the living room. When she starts talking about what happened to the character in the real world and then what happened to her as the doppelganger, because they're supposed to be they're tethered together. That word kept coming up multiple times in the film. You kind of saw, I think that conversation had a lot of meaning, that if I went back and saw it again, I'd pay much more attention to that conversation, because once you find out what happens at the end, that ends up being very important, I think.
Yeah, I would say, even if I was watching this at home, I think I would almost be very much inclined to watch it with subtitles.
And definitely rewind and watch that
yeah,
part.
Instead of having to rewind it and just trying to catch all the words, literally, there's certain, usually you can put on a subtitle option and you can see the words at the bottom. So I would definitely want to do that for certain scenes, just to catch all the dialogue, because I think a lot of the dialogue that the mother doppelganger was saying was very important to the plot.
Yes,
it was. And you almost
she's laying it out. I think the doppelganger's laying out the plot a little bit.
Yeah, there's nothing that she says that's a throwaway line.
No,
it's all what she's saying is really kind of foundational, and it may not even make sense until later.
Right.
You almost
I don't think it did. To me, I didn't get a lot of what she was saying until the ending.
Yeah, and so I think a movie like this, you know, and I think, you know, in the same, I felt the same way in Get Out. I felt that, you know, to really enjoy the movie, you almost got to watch it twice because you got to know where it's going to end up, so you can pay more attention to things that are happening in the beginning. Because, like I said, in Get Out, you're trying to figure out what's going on, just like everybody else, and then eventually it you know, it makes sense, and then you want to sit there and say, oh, I want to go back and now I know what's going on to pay more attention to it.
Now, one of the nice tricks that they held in the trailers for you is that the trailers kind of only make you believe that the doppelgangers are just this family.
Yeah.
And it's not. So that was one of the more interesting twists, was that there's doppelgangers of everybody.
Right.
But we don't know if it's the United States or if it's the entire world. There's a text that
or just or this town in California.
There's a text that pops up in the beginning of the film that talks about you know, just in the United States, there's like abandoned tunnels and
all the thousands and thousands of miles of abandoned
tunnels like mines,
across the United States.
Right.
So and you know, it is kind of interesting because, you know, when they bring that up in the beginning, you almost have no idea why they're saying it.
You're like, it doesn't connect with anything.
Yeah, it doesn't connect with anything till much later. So when they finally started getting into like the underground aspect of it, I was like, oh, that's why they talked about that, because I had forgotten about that. I had completely forgotten about that. And then when it started to make sense later, then I was like, oh, that's why they brought this.
So this movie does have continuous flashback scenes with Lupita Nyong'o's character. Like she's the focal point. And something happens to her in a mirrored house when she's a kid, and she kind of gets like, and this happens in Santa Cruz when she's a kid, and she never goes back there until, I mean, what is it, like 30 years later, basically, right?
Or at least
even maybe a little bit more, because it happened in what, 85, 86?
I thought it happened in 86, and now it's present day.
And now it's present day, yeah. So it's over 30 years.
Yeah, about 30 years later, yeah.
And it just coincides with the event that basically takes place, and you know, then so at some point the main characters make it all the way to their friend's house to see what's going on over there and kind of check in with them, and by the time they get there, those people's doppelgangers have basically killed the entire family already. Now, the doppelgangers I found to be so interesting. I think I found them more interesting than the actual main characters.
Oh yeah. I think the best character in the whole movie, just in terms of the performance given, I think was the Elizabeth Moss's doppelganger, which is the mother of their friends.
Right.
There's a family that they're friends with, and her doppelganger, I think, was by far. I think I considered her performance to be the highlight of the film.
That was great.
I was like, really, and it's not someone I'm even familiar with. I mean, I don't really know who Elizabeth Moss is.
Handmaid's Tale. Well, she was in Handmaid's Tale. She was also in Mad Men. I think that was like her big star.
Oh, okay. So because I haven't seen any of those.
And then she stars in Handmaid's Tale.
So I think one of the problems I had with this film is that it was definitely weighted towards style over substance, and sometimes that works and sometimes it doesn't. You know, I think the problem is that they did not do a very good job at all of explaining exactly what was happening, how and why.
Yeah.
There was a lot of things that weren't really clear, and I don't know that it sold itself enough where where your suspension of disbelief would just allow you to easily accept everything that was happening at face value. And to me that was a significant contrast to Get Out, because I think Get Out eventually explained itself.
Well, I think by the end, I think you understood.
You understood what was going on and why and how. And I think they went out of their way to explain it. And in this movie, I feel they didn't go out of their way to explain it at all. They were just showing what was happening. And at the end of the day, it was, it's actually a huge sub-story as to what actually is happening.
Right.
And it's just, to me, it's full of holes and inconsistencies, and it just doesn't do a very good job of explaining itself.
Yeah, so the main character's family at one point, like, they're basically trying to get it. Like, they're trying to, like, leave. They're trying to drive away. And then again, they come up against one of their doppelgangers. And what I found interesting in the film was each doppelganger of the main family, when the doppelgangers start to get killed off, they get killed off by their counterpart.
Yeah, and I didn't quite catch that, but
So,
I think that
by the second death, I started catching on to that. So you start seeing, Winston Duke, so the father, he ends up killing his doppelganger, and then the daughter ends up killing her doppelganger, and then the son figures out how to kill his doppelganger, and then it's off to Lupita Nyong'o, and then her doppelganger at the very end.
And I think that might have just been done for like a story device, just to have these resolutions line up. Having each person wind up killing their own doppelganger, I think just may have made for good story symmetry as opposed to mixing and matching. So I think that might have been more of a plot device, because ultimately what you have is basically you have like all these underground tunnels where all of these doppelgangers have been created.
And we're assuming that they're clones, right? This is what we're assuming.
I don't know. I don't
know what else to call them.
Yeah, and they're very odd because there is a connection between the doppelganger that lives underground in the tunnels and the person who lives up front. So they are tethered together. There is a connection because what they do is they just live in this labyrinth of tunnels, and they mimic
what's happening,
the motions and what's happening above ground. Exactly where they're going and what they're doing, but just in a very bizarre and jerky and in an odd way. And they don't really explain who created them at all.
No.
And like there's nobody there. There's nobody in charge.
And then you start to find out. So it's at one point, Lupita Nyong'o, she follows her doppelganger down into the tunnel system.
Well, and then to me that was a little bit of a strain because she wasn't actually following them. She just was intuitively trying to catch them.
Well, she was trying to find her son because
the doppelganger but she never saw them and said, "Oh, that's where they're going and went after them." She just wound up
intuitively getting
where she needed to be.
Yeah. And then and then they come kind of face to face, and they have their final battle. But you see the labyrinth down there. But it's interesting. Like you start asking yourself questions, like like what John was saying, like why were they created? How did they survive for so long? Because you start in these flashbacks, you see Lupita Nyong'o, you see her character age from a little girl to her adulthood, and you're like, okay, how did you get to that point? And supposedly no one else really spoke. So these doppelgangers just make noise. They kind of have deep grunt
and they go through the motions, and it's almost like they're forced to go. They're almost like shadows.
Right.
They're like shadows of the people above ground, and they live the same life that the people above ground are living, but just in this odd labyrinth tunnel system where they're going through these motions and they're very animalistic, and they just don't explain where anything comes from.
Right.
How are they eating? Are they really eating food? And if they are,
Well, they were eating the rabbits.
Is that what the rabbits were for?
That's what I think the rabbits were for food.
Oh, see, I thought you would.
Well, because you see them at one point.
Always running around.
Eating the rabbit.
Oh, okay. See, I didn't catch that.
So when you see that scene when they're at the carnival in Santa Cruz, and you see that couple eating food above ground in the tunnel system, you see those same people eating, but they're eating rabbit.
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure. I didn't really take a look at
because that's exactly.
I was actually more focused on their facial expressions.
But that's exactly right. How do they?
Yeah.
How do they have it? And not to mention too, that one room in the downstairs was basically a classroom. So were they teaching them? Was someone teaching something?
Yeah. There's actually nobody down there at any point in time except doppelgangers.
Yeah.
You even have the scene where the little girl, she wins the shirt in the carnival, and then you go down to the labyrinth, and the doppelganger girl, she wins the same. She gets the shirt.
She wins a shirt. Yeah.
I mean, how did that shirt get there? How did they're not prophetic. Prophets. They're not prophets. Nobody would have no idea what this girl at this carnival is going to win as a prize.
Well, she didn't want the exact same shirt because when she ends up strangling herself and pulling her in. So here's the big twist. Okay.
Yeah, which is insane, but yeah.
So the big twist
at the end,
at the very end of the film, there's a final flashback that connects everything, and the Lupita Nyong'o, when she was a little girl, and she came face to face with her doppelganger. The doppelganger reacted so quickly that she choked out the above ground version and drags her down into the tunnel.
Right.
And then she changes her shirt out. And then she wears the Thriller shirt.
Okay.
But whatever shirt, but she did receive a similar black shirt.
Right.
And then she just took it and put it on her.
Right. Kind of chained her to the bed.
Right.
And then went up into the real world and replaced her and was living.
And lived her life. And then and this kind of explains why the doppelganger version that we know now, well, she could actually speak. And it actually makes sense as to why she had that low, monotone voice, is because when she got choked out, most likely they damaged her larynx.
Okay.
So, but she could talk, where none of the other doppelgangers could talk. So that, to me, finally made sense as to why that occurred. But the twist at the end is kind of like, all right, there's a little bit of shock value in the fact that we figure out, okay, that was actually the doppelganger that lived that life.
Mm-hmm.
But
I don't know that it makes any sense. I honestly feel that the twist ending was for like kind of like that shock value of, oh my God, like that you commonly see at the end of movies these days. Right. And I think it was a twist ending for the sake of a twist ending, because it didn't really explain anything.
I don't know if it had that much of an impact. Like, what was the impact?
Yeah, and it actually almost makes no sense. It actually makes the movie more confusing, because it doesn't resolve any issues. It doesn't answer any questions.
It doesn't give you any more information.
In fact, it
gives you more questions.
Yeah, it gives you more questions, and to me, that's not the point of the movie. The point of the movie isn't to make you think about what's going on. I think the point of the movie was more just a this stylistic type movie that they wanted to do this type of story, but I just think they were very lax in explaining it. They got away with explaining nothing, just by all the questions that you have are things that are not explained in the movie, and I don't even know that the filmmakers even have an answer to any of these questions. I don't know that there's like a sub-story that they go, well, this is what we were trying for.
See, I don't know. Jordan Peele is really intelligent. He's written some good stuff. I wouldn't be surprised if he did. Now, I think we all understand that there are movies where you kind of get spoon-fed everything as far as explanations, and sometimes that can be a little dull and boring. You kind of want to figure things out.
It's a little bit, it's a little bit insulting to,
right?
Insulting to people's intelligence.
Don't tell me the entire movie.
Right.
Let me figure it out. But at the end, when you get to a point where you're paying attention to the whole film and you kind of still feel like the ending you don't fully get.
Yeah. It's
not like this is a franchise. It's not like
there's not going to be another one.
I'm not looking for looking ahead to a sequel saying, okay, they're going to explain more in the second one of who created these doppelgangers and why. I mean, this is a self-contained entity, and I'm just wondering, are we supposed to come up with stuff on our own? Was that an intention where we should try to figure that out?
Yeah, I mean, it could have very well been that he was just trying to put you through these scenarios to have metaphors, to try and, there might have been symbolism and metaphors in it.
And that's what I wonder.
But okay, so one of the, this movie was, in my opinion, was, like I said, it was much more style over substance, and I think Jordan Peele made a big mistake with this movie. Some people probably disagree with me, but like I feel that he's coming off of Get Out, which was a huge success. And I think that he would have been able to kind of almost do whatever he wanted with this film. Like he probably had enough control over this film to do whatever he wanted. And in all honesty, I think this movie would have worked so much better in black and white. Because it was like, it basically had like a horror feel to it.
Absolutely.
But eventually it wound up in almost a little bit of science fiction as well, because it was like
the first half of this film.
Like I said, these if they were staying with the shadows and they were living in some sort of netherworld, it would be like very horror-y. But they literally do live underground, which makes it based in reality.
I think
more science fiction.
I think the first half of this film is more horror suspense.
Yes,
and then it moves into more science fiction, because once you get past like the home invasion and all that, it's not as horror or suspense anymore. Like you lose that like scared factor.
Well, now it becomes a global pandemic situation,
right? And and it talks about like
as opposed to like you have gazillions of isolated films where it's like you against somebody,
right?
And then all of a sudden this became like it's happening everywhere,
Yeah, and there is a news report that starts to occur where it talks about these people in these red jumpsuits are kind of like running amok all over the place. Mm-hmm. So like it turns into more, like you said, that pandemic.
Yeah, and they don't quite explain whether, like I said, you don't know how far it's going.
Right.
You don't know if it's literally just in California, or just all of the United States, or the whole world.
Yeah.
And to me, it just doesn't seem. I mean, it doesn't seem physically impossible. Doesn't seem physically possible that it would be the whole world, because I think they do. I think they say like all these tunnels underneath the United States.
Right.
So I think it might only be the United States.
So if it's the United States, that's over 300 million people.
Yeah. So exactly. I mean, I don't think you'd have. Like I said, these things aren't. It's not like it's like 5 miles underground. It's like.
Right.
Apparently nobody ever like walked through. No kids or anybody ever went into any of these abandoned tunnels. Anywhere and found this thing. This girl literally, she went through one of the back doors in that hall of mirrors on the beach, and went through some corridors and eventually went down an escalator and into this huge labyrinth of and not caves. These were well constructed. It was like walking through like a building.
Yeah. These are man-made structures. So there's definitely this movie brings a lot of questions. I will say that, and I think Get Out and this film. So I think he is developing I think there is a good style to what he's doing.
Right, and I think he should have tried to stay with that and make it a little bit less global.
Well, it's funny when you said the whole black and white. Now, JohnnyMo brought this up the other night and said that, and I agree with him that this might have been more effective as black and white.
Yeah, as those horror scenes, with if things were happening at night, and with use of shadows, and the way these characters moved and interacted, I really think it would have looked and played so much better in black and white with all the different contrast. Because black and white kind of really gets you really focused on facial expressions, and characters' movements, and that is a very stylistic choice, and I think that would have worked really well. But like you were going to say,
I was going to say this: the only hint of color that I thought would have actually worked out really well are the doppelgangers' jumpsuits,
right?
Because they all wore the same thing,
and that would have been like because when I brought it up to Chris said, "Oh, but then he really liked the red suits." And I'm like, well, yeah, that would have been the spot where you would have. You would have incorporated color into this and had all these guys in their red suits, and that would have easily could have been like the only color in the film, and that would have been really, I think that would have been really, really effective. And once you start getting into all these stylistic choices, there's less expectation of realism. When you incorporate color into a movie like this, it sets you up in a way that it looks like it's taking place in the real world.
Right.
So you're expecting real world answers and solutions, and it's not taking place, just in, some kind of stylistic place. When you start to embed the film into the real world, you ask questions and you expect logical answers. Well, how did this happen? How did this happen? It takes away that style and puts, and if you're doing a true science fiction film, you would have explanations to all those things.
Right.
And I don't think they do that here, because literally you have
I'll tell you what, I would like to go back and watch it again.
You know, maybe I'm missing something. I don't know.
Well, that's what I wondered too. Like, did we? But that's why I think that whole conversation, when the families are sitting across from one another, I think that conversation had so much more weight than initially thought, because she's trying to explain that tethered sensation of the two of them.
Right.
But to me, that's only that's only them being tethered. It still doesn't explain the why as to
right. How on earth was such a one? How were all these beings created, and right. how on earth was the connection?
Right. How are they tethered? Like,
so
how is that
again,
possible?
if you're going into like a supernatural type movie, maybe there's some sort of like demons involved. Then there's. You suspend your disbelief a lot in those types of movies. But if you're getting into science fiction now, where these things were done by scientists, you kind of have to explain it a little bit. Yes. and to me, they didn't explain it at all. So
and that's why I wonder: is it open? Was this either A, open-ended, where it's really left up to us to interpret, or B, did we just miss something?
Yeah, so
I'll say this. I enjoyed the film. I enjoyed the first half of that film. The second half of the film loses me a little bit because of, we're going into this more or less science fiction aspect, and yet we're not. There was a lot of questions left unanswered, and that I like having my questions either answered or giving me enough evidence that I can figure it out for myself.
And I'm not the type of person that needs every single question answered, but to me, this movie didn't answer any questions, and that to me was a problem.
Well, it just kept giving you questions. Yeah, it kept giving you kept asking more and more.
It
questions.
Answered almost none. And to me, that's the difference. If you're gonna go that route, where you're not gonna answer questions, you have to do that movie so well so that you let that slide. Yeah. And to me, it was not done so well. Like, if it was, maybe if it was done in black and white and it was really done stylistically throughout, and it kept the questions to a minimum, you would have let, a lot of things slide, I think. And that's the difference between, I think, a good movie and a great movie. This movie was, to me, barely just good, because it was done okay, but it really left you annoyed, I think, with all of the unanswered questions.
I think, well, that's a good thing. I enjoyed the film, but I definitely walked out a little annoyed that there was a lot more questions in the end.
And I think maybe they just expected people to not think about it that much and just enjoy the ride.
I mean, maybe we're just overthinking it.
But I mean, there's a, like I said, you could walk out of this movie with the 40 questions that were posed, you didn't get an answer to any one of them. And that to me, I thought was a problem. They give no indications as to how these things came about and how these people actually became connected. But if you could almost get away with that and say, okay, well, it does exist, and because the family doesn't know, you're in their shoes. You have no idea. You're stumbling around these tunnels and you have no idea. There's no one to talk to. But I think the thing that really annoyed me at the end is, okay, so now you have this tether relationship where everybody at the bottom, is forced into mimicking the lives and actions and motions of everybody on top. So when they do the final switch at the end, where you realize, where they finally show that, the two girls switched. Right. Now you have, what really happened is that the doppelganger was living the life of a real human being, and the real little girl was stuck in the underground.
It almost would have made better if it was just their family, because you can understand Lupita Nyong'o's. You can understand the girl who lived above ground in the beginning and now ends up living underground. You can understand her want for revenge, right, for those 30 plus years, right? And she finds a way to take advantage of that.
I don't know why she wouldn't have just tried to escape. Right. Two, by these two girls swapping positions, the tether relationship shouldn't have reversed. It's not based on location. Ultimately, whatever the little girl down in the basement, she still was the human, and the doppelganger was up front. So whatever she was doing down there, the girl who was tethered should have been forced to mimic that.
Well, what
and they made it sound like the tether relationship switch, and that makes absolutely no sense whatsoever.
What you almost ended up finding out was the fact that the doppelganger ends up almost like post-traumatic stress, where like she actually ends up forgetting her lifestyle. That's why these flashbacks keep happening throughout the film, because it's her remembering her life underground.
Right. Now, why she would all of a sudden like it almost comes like a revelation to her at the end. Like she finally realized that she's the doppelganger.
She was the doppelganger.
How on earth did she ever forget?
Right.
You know, like
what? It's one of those things where it's like just you're gone for so long, and because it happened at such a young age that you just end up, because you start living the normal life.
Right.
You know,
but this girl is scared of the beach.
Right.
And the little girl should have been the one scared of the beach. The little girl, the real little girl, she was the one that had the scary encounter at the beach. You know, the other girl was just coming up from the labyrinth into the it just didn't at no point in the movie did you ever feel that they could have possibly been the other way around. Like that there was a switch.
So no. I mean, they definitely, that was a good shock. I have to say, given that, that was unexpected.
Right, and because there was nothing, and like I said, it was. I think it was done totally to shock people, because to me it absolutely made no sense. It strains the credibility of the things that you're trying to make people believe. You're trying to make people believe that there's this tether relationship, and now all of a sudden, now you got to believe that it still existed in reverse, which it just didn't make any sense. So I think he really did that switch to do like an M. Night Shyamalan type twist type thing at the end. But not for nothing, all of those M. Night Shyamalan twists explain the movie. It's like, oh my God, that's what's going on. When you see the
Sixth Sense,
the shocking reveal of the Sixth Sense, or the Village,
people, then you realize that's. Now you realize Bruce Willis is dead.
The Village, where you realize that they don't. It's not actually taking place hundreds of years ago. It's, now it's like, oh, it all works together. And I think it's very easy to kind of copy that style.
I don't think he was copying that style, though.
Well, I think it was that type it was that type of device, but it didn't do anything. It didn't explain anything, and in fact, it made it less explainable.
But this is where it was different from Get Out, because in Get Out, the main character sees, once he's in the closet, and realizes that his girlfriend has been doing this to all of her other boyfriends,
right,
and that he's just the latest one. Now all of a sudden, that explains,
right. Like I said, so yeah,
that part.
I think
that explains.
I think it worked out. I think it worked, and what they did in Get Out made sense.
Yes.
And what they did in this movie didn't. And then you have the whole Hands Across America thing, which is like
that little subtle thing that was going on.
Like, I don't even know what that's supposed to mean, and not for nothing, So
that was the shirt that she had on when she went underground.
Okay.
So that was the shirt that was put on her, was this whole Hands Across America thing. But what the hell does? But I don't. Yeah. I still don't get what it means. And the final shot is the camera pans out, and all of a sudden you literally start to see this line of people in red.
And not for nothing, how did they all get there? I mean, if this is happening all across the country, they're doing a line from I don't know, from California to New York. Who knows? But it's like, and it's all happening on the same day. Like
right.
They all did this all on the same day.
But it's all a killing spree. They're basically going out and they're killing their counterparts.
But like people up in Washington, or the doppelgangers are driving down to get on the line. You know what I mean? The United States is a huge country. You got this one line of people going across. So one of the other things that I thought was a little odd was so when their friends, the family of friends, their doppelgangers show up, and they kill the entire family instantaneously.
Yep.
And I think that was their goal. Like ultimately, the doppelgangers are pissed, and they're coming up to kill everybody. So now the doppelgangers of the main characters, they didn't kill them right away.
No.
They they had almost every opportunity at any point in time.
When they're sitting across from the couch from them, they easily could have just killed them right there.
And so that to me, I'm like, okay, like I said, you don't know what their intention is until you start seeing what's happening in the rest of the world.
Right.
So in this family, it's this long drawn out thing.
Yeah.
But apparently everybody else is getting, killed immediately. So why is this different? Maybe it has to be because, this is the girl. But I'm like, I still don't even understand the motivation. Like, I can understand the motivation of the girl who was under the ground for the past 30 years, wanting to get back at the girl.
But that's what I mean. If it was just the one family, I completely get it.
Right. Now it makes sense. Like, she's stuck with her family and this and that, and
but
family to family.
Is the whole thing because they lived underground? Did they just become envious of the people that lived above ground, and so they're just going out and killing them almost out of envy?
Yeah.
Is that to me is one of the only explanations as to why these people would go on that killing spree.
Yeah. But why
does that sum everything up?
Right.
Is that the reason for everything?
Why is she like the leader that planned this whole thing?
She could talk.
I know, but like I can't figure out why she would sit there and say, okay.
But everyone followed her.
I want to do this, and I want to kill everybody on the surface.
Right.
And I'm going to have all my people come with me, and we're going to do all that.
Maybe she, yeah.
I don't understand. Like, to me, it made sense for her to have a vendetta against that one. Her.
Yeah.
Not the rest of her family, and certainly not everybody
on the planet.
On the planet.
Yeah. No, I agree. There's definitely unanswered questions to this.
And the underground labyrinth was actually, really kind of cool.
That part of it was really interesting.
Like it looked pretty good, but it's like you sit there and say, how could a place like this even exist?
Right. How does it go unnoticed?
And if they're all over the country, or even say it's even only all over Santa Cruz, or maybe all over the state of California, or maybe all over the country, like, how is it that nobody has ever found these? Because it's not like, it wasn't even like a secret door. Like, this girl literally just went into the Hall of Mirrors, found the exit, went down some stairs, went through here, went through there. Couple of corridors, down an escalator, and now all of a sudden she's in this giant underground, area. Yeah. And wherever these are, and, I don't even know, like, are they supposed to be completely connected? Are they all connected everywhere?
Yeah.
Does it go on for miles throughout the whole country?
That's what you don't know.
You don't know. So it's like, how is it that nobody has ever found these? Unless it's just this one area.
Right.
And if that's the case, that girl, they didn't even live there.
That's a vacation spot.
That's their vacation spot. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, how do all these people move? Like, if everybody underground is mimicking the people above ground, everywhere where people go, how did they mimic all that?
Right.
To me, it was like one of those things where they were selling a premise, and they did so little to explain it that it detracted from the movie.
Unless it's just supposed to be a mystery, and it's just supposed to be completely open-ended. But I don't know if that was the case.
Yeah, I think it was.
I would really like to hear, I mean, this is opening weekend, so I'm sure within the next couple of weeks, Jordan Peele's probably going to be going on interviews, and most likely someone's going to ask him about the explanation of the ending. Someone's going to ask him.
Yeah, I would love to hear that, because I think the storytelling was lazy in terms of, the plot.
The wrapping it up part, the whole. I keep going back.
The preface.
The first part of this film is great. Like, you watch this film, like, there is so much that goes on, and you're so involved in seeing what happens next. Like, are they going to get them? Because there's so many close calls in this film, and then finally all this, and then it starts to swing the other way, where the family starts to finally get out of it and get away from everything.
Yeah.
But it's just that the ending part where you start to, that's where, like, the majority of these questions really start to come in.
Oh, yeah.
Is towards the end.
Because the beginning is really, that whole first half, that whole, first act, or even second act, is literally like, it's this isolated scenario.
Right. It's in their home. Like,
you're enjoying the mystery of it. You're enjoying, you don't know what's going on, but they're presenting it in a way that you're almost in the shoes of the family.
Absolutely.
And it's like, you have the same questions they have. And it's, it's like, it's this, psychological, type of terror type movie of, people trying to get in, and that's a common theme in a lot of films, but usually it's all happening. That's it. This is the only place where it's happening. Like there is an outside world,
right?
So that was one of the funny things where early they call the cops.
Oh yes, that's right.
And the cops never show up.
So when the family first shows up, the doppelgangers, and they're standing at like the edge of the driveway, right? The mother right away calls the cops. Yeah. And they said, okay, they're 15 minutes away.
Right. And they never get there.
They never get
there.
And
I'm sitting there going like...
The events that take place in the house are well over 15 minutes.
I'm like, where are the cops? And then you find out that, because this is happening all over the place,
right?
They probably got, They
probably got ransacked.
Yeah, exactly. But it's like... I don't know. I feel that if the movie did more to explain what was going on, I think it really could have been like a really good 3.5 stars.
Either more explained or just more isolated. I think if they just would have kept it isolated.
Oh yeah, if they didn't try to blow it up into this pandemic that's happening everywhere, it should have just been an isolated.
I think as soon as it went that broad, it made it much more on the scientific side, sci-fi side, and then to me, it almost gets harder to explain. If you kept it real small, that to me would have, I think, made a much better film.
Yeah, no, I agree.
I think that would have wrapped things up a little bit more clearly.
At the end of the day, I think I walked out of that film giving it 2.5 stars at best. And I would read some reviews that gave it like 3.5 stars. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, all right, I think people are just a little bit more forgiving. They're willing to, ignore some of these gaping plot holes and look at it more in terms of like a stylistic type thriller. Well,
I think a lot of it just just sit back and enjoy the film
and turn your brain off.
And I'm sorry if that's the case, you're going to enjoy the film. There is a lot to enjoy about this movie. The performances are fantastic. I thought the music was really well done. Mm-hmm. It definitely helped build up suspense. That's for sure. I enjoyed
the performances of the kids.
Oh, I thought they were really good. Yeah.
The kid doppelgangers.
The doppelgangers are, after you see this film, the doppelgangers are definitely the most interesting part of this film.
Yeah.
By far. And
the doppelgangers of the other family.
Yes,
were pretty intense. Yeah. I like I said, so there was a lot there, but most of the good stuff was in the first half. Yeah. And then the second half really kind of breaks down, and now it tries to provide insight into what's going on, but it really doesn't make any sense. And like to me, the second half really brings the movie down. However, that being said, even if the movie was isolated to only that family, I would have liked to think that if it was just this isolated scenario, that the second half would have, if they were doing the movie, I think right, they would have left it isolated and explained what was going on. Yeah. And I think it would have been a lot easier to explain an isolated scenario as opposed to a global,
global,
not
or even just within a country.
Yeah, a country pandemic.
Yeah. I mean, overall, I think it's worth going to and seeing if you have the same questions we do, or maybe you're going to be like, no, you guys missed it. They explained this, which I don't think they did.
I don't think they did.
I don't think they did.
I'm actually going to go, I think, and go online and just look at some other reviews and see, what other, because I had only read one review and it gave it 3.5 stars, and I was like, oh, okay, that's a good sign.
I mean, listen, style wise, performance wise, good film. I think it's worth. I think it's definitely worth going and seeing on the big screen. I think a lot of these horror suspense films are worth seeing on the big screen. I think it makes it just a little bit more dramatic.
I would like to think that Jordan Peele will hone his craft better.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's gonna. I think he's gonna. I like what Jordan Peele has been putting out. I really liked Get Out, and like I said, I liked parts of this film. So I mean, he's going in the right direction. There's no doubt that this guy is going to continue to make really good films. Yeah,
because I think it was like, it was like a different type of film. It wasn't the same old.
I think he's like you were saying before. He's fine tuning his craft. I think he's finding his style, and you could see that there's some similarities between Get Out and in this film and Us, in the way like he likes to shoot things. You could almost, I think you get to see a little bit of that. So I'm interested to see his next film whenever that ends up coming out.
And I just hope they put a little bit more emphasis on, you know, the logic of the plot.
He'd make a really good black and white film.
Yeah, exactly.
Jordan Peele. I mean, if you did, I'll tell you that I think that does change things if you make this film into a black and white film.
Oh, and you know, it's a shame that, you know, like it was probably never even a consideration. But like watching this film, I literally remember like half an hour into the film, I'm going, this movie would have been great in black and white. It really would have.
Yeah.
So
we'll call it Jordan. We'll tell him.
Yeah, like he, you know,
he'll take it.
Jordan Peele, if you're watching this, you know, take heed. Work on your plots. Delve into black and white.
Keep coming out with good stuff. So I think with that, anything more you want to add?
I think we're done.
Yeah, I think that was it. So listen, we hope you guys enjoyed episode 10 for the review of Us, and I think next might be Shazam. 2 weeks.
Yeah, Shazam's coming out soon. Sure.
All right. So guys, I think with that we're going to say goodnight.
Okay.
Enjoy. All right. Thank you guys so much for watching.
Have a good one, guys.